Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video we have the Retribution Paladin PvE DPS guide for Season 1 of the War Within. Couple disclaimers right off the top. First disclaimer is, this video is intended for all Ret Paladins. Sometimes I'll talk a little bit sweaty, sometimes I will talk a little bit casual. This is on purpose. I try to make this guide digestible for everybody. I'm trying to help really sweaty, really high-end players. Don't take sweaty as an offense. I am as well. And I'm also trying to help really casual players. So this is intended for everybody. Sometimes that's a hard needle to thread, but I do try to do that. Another disclaimer. A lot of times, the best answer is to simulate your character. However, I do know that there's a lot of players who don't want to hear that, and they just want a straight answer. So I'll also always try to give you a straight answer. Even if I do mention that you should simulate it, I will try to give you the best overall answer that you can have for whatever we are talking about. Another thing is that there is some changes coming. So we'll talk, I guess we don't have to talk about talents if I talk about it now, but there will be some changes coming in 11.0.5 to the Paladin tree at least, and possibly the Ret tree as well. So when that happens, I will do an update video, 11.0.5 Ret DPS update or something like that. That'll update this to the new talent tree when that day comes, which will be probably like November or something like that. So when that day comes, we will do an update for that, so that way everyone can be all set. The same thing goes with anything else. If trinkets get tuned, embellishments get tuned, we get tuned in a certain way, I will do updates for any of the information that's on here, because it could become outdated. If the information does not become outdated, then I won't bother, of course. But if anything becomes outdated or no longer true, I will always do an update for it. So come back to the channel, subscribe to the channel, whatever. Come back to the channel, and there'll probably be an update shortly after any kind of big changes like that happen. So you can probably count on that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the things that are important to DPS, and we'll go ahead and get started. And we're going to talk about our stats first. So we did have a change here somewhat recently to where mastery was higher than strength, which is not supposed to be the case. They always want your main stat to be the highest stat. However, mastery was higher than strength. They did change that. Now strength is still good. So eye level is still good. However, mastery is still really good as well. It's right behind strength. So if you get an eye level upgrade and it has mastery on it, it's probably really good for you. These are, again, general guidelines. If you have 60% crit and you simulate your character, it's going to rank crit at the very bottom, I promise you. Versatility will be higher, everything will be higher. If you have like 60% crit, it's going to put crit at the bottom. And so you have to kind of use common sense as well, but these are just general guidelines. So strength, mastery, then haste crit, again, up to a certain level. Crit will bottom out faster than haste. Haste can go up a little bit higher. I'll say like high 20s haste, or high 20s crit, and probably like mid 30s haste. We're not going to get to that in Season 1, especially the haste part, most likely. So it probably won't be relevant here. And then at that point, finally, versatility would be last. And that's when you might start adding a little bit of versatility, is once all your other stats are super high. However, mastery will still remain good much longer than the other ones will. All that being said, something I don't mention enough is your actual weapon DPS. If you get a huge weapon upgrade, just the DPS of the weapon, the damage done on the weapon, right? That will be a huge upgrade for you in basically every case. Weapon DPS is by far the most valuable thing, which makes sense for two-handed. Same thing for like warriors, stuff like that, right? So weapon DPS also very important. And that's about where our stats stand right now. Up next, we will move on to talk about our hero talents and talents. Okay, so we'll open up our talents here. And first of all, let's go ahead and start with the hero talents. So we're going to talk about these as if you don't know too much about them yet. Maybe you're new to Ret, maybe this is your first season playing Ret. We have two pretty fun hero talents to play, and it's Templar and Herald of the Sun. Now, for most competitive content, as of right now, we'll probably be using Herald of the Sun, but we are going to go over Templar as well. So Templar, basically, after you use your Wake of Ashes, you get an ability called Hammer of Light. It costs 5 holy power. It does a ton of damage to your main target and to multiple targets, with the main target as well. It's a very strong cleave or single target ability. Also, Templar causes hammers to rain down on your enemies. These can hit your main target, but they can also cleave as well, just like Hammer of Light can cleave. And that's basically the gist of Hammer of Light. It's a very cool button to hit. You get to hit it 3 times a minute, because it also can proc a free one as well. So you get 2 Wake of Ashes a minute plus a free one. So it's like 3 a minute. It's really strong. It's really cool move to press. However, there was actually a hot fix last week about the same time as the anniversary stuff came out, which I was completely consumed with, the 20th anniversary news. And I actually missed that they fixed some things with Herald of the Sun. And it actually is going to be better in most situations. So let's move and talk about Herald of the Sun. So Herald of the Sun, what this does is it puts a dot on your enemy or enemies in AoE, and on some of them, not all of them. And then also, while those dots are on and your wings are popped, a beam of light is going to come between you and the targets that have the dawn light on them. This thing burns whatever's in it. So if you're single targeting, you want to burn the single target. If you're AoEing, you want to burn as many AoE targets as you can with this beam of light, essentially. And that's kind of it. It also just augments your Hammer of Wrath damage, and it augments your Divine Storm damage. And yeah, it's very straightforward, very simple. It doesn't actually change your like rotation or anything like Templar does with Hammer of Light, and it's very, very straightforward. We will go over some Templar stuff because I would not be surprised if Blizzard sees Herald of the Sun being used in single target and is like, well, we kind of wanted Templar to be used in single target. That's the way it's been since beta. But when they fixed something, it made Herald of the Sun actually better. So we will see. Maybe they like us playing Herald of the Sun because it's literally like looks like a Ret Paladin, but we will see there. And we'll go through the builds. We'll talk about the main builds, which are going to be Herald, but we'll also talk about Templar as well, especially a Templar single target build. So let's go ahead. We'll start with single target Herald of the Sun. So we just have this up. For the choice nodes here, we like to have Gleaming Rays, and we like to have Blessing of Anchi, I think is how you pronounce that. And that's just pretty much the talent that you're going to change, is the center one here. So on AoE, I like to use Lingering Radiance. For single target, I like to use Blessing of Anchi here. So single target, we have Blessing of Anchi. When we go to AoE, we'll see everything else on the Herald of the Sun will be the same, but you'll see that one changed there. All right. So and I'm not gonna be able to go through every single talent. As we talked about at the top, this Paladin talent tree is going to get changed, and I'll have to update that at 11.0.5. And yeah, we'll talk about the throughput talents still here on this side, and then we'll talk a little bit about talents, but we're mostly I will put the import strings down below so you have a chance to just straight import them, look at them that way. You can take a screenshot or whatever of the picture up right now. Down here, the only thing you're missing is Seal of Order behind my camera. So let's go ahead and just jump into this. So like I said, Herald of the Sun, single target build. Obviously, we are going to take all the throughput nodes, right? So Holy Aegis, we're going to take Avenging Wrath, Justification. This is not throughput, but it's still important. Sanctified Plates. We are going to take Seal of Might, Seal of Alacrity, of Dusk and Dawn, Seal of Order, like I mentioned, Divine Toll, Divine Resonance, Seal of Crusader, and Vengeful Wrath. Excuse me. So those are the throughput nodes. You're going to make sure you have these. I also have Touch of Light here taken. This actually isn't necessary or doesn't really affect you that much. It doesn't really add much. If you want to take Touch of Light off, you can. It's not really going to affect you. It's technically damage, but honestly, it's not going to really show up at all. It's going to be at the very bottom of your damage breakdown. Let's go ahead and talk about the single target stuff for Herald of the Sun on the Ret side. We have on a choice node Swift Justice. We have Improved Blade of Justice. We have Art of War. We have Vanguard's Momentum. We have Rush of Light chosen. We have a new ability, Holy Embers, or Holy Flames. I don't know why I called it Holy Embers. We are running Crusade. Crusade's a little bit better. And And mostly because we're playing Radiant Glory, and I know some people are not a fan of Radiant Glory, but because of our tier set, which we'll talk about later, that is going to be what we're running there. We're going to be running Crusading Strikes. I'm focusing mostly on the choice nodes here. The Boundless Judgment, Shield of Vengeance. We're going to be running Execution Sentence, and then basically fill in every talent as you can. We're going to do ability priority next. So like if you don't know how to press the abilities, we will talk about that. But I can't just go 10 minutes on every single talent, unfortunately, because I could do that, but the video would be even longer than it already will be. So this is kind of just a Herald of the Sun single target build. Now let's go ahead and look at Herald of the Sun for AoE. So Herald of the Sun for AoE, it's going to be a little bit different here. Like I said, the ability we change inside Herald of the Sun is the one in the center, and I like to use Lingering Radiance here for AoE for like Mythic Plus, right? This is a Mythic Plus build, okay? So the only difference over here is we don't have Vengeful Wrath. Instead, we have Divine Purpose, which is going to be better for just AoE purposes. And then over here, we're going to have some different changes. We're going to have Tempest of the Lightbringer selected. We're not going to have neither of these two selected. Instead, we're going to pick the two beneath them. So we're going to have Blessed Champion, and we're going to have Empyrean Power selected. Other than that, we're pretty much rocking the same exact things everywhere else. We do not have Empyrean Legacy selected. And that was basically moved up here to the Tempest of the Lightbringer. And then the other big change for choice nodes is going to be Final Reckoning over Execution Sentence, again, just for AoE purposes. It's going to give you more total AoE damage by doing so. And in Mythic Plus, that's going to increase your overall damage by quite a bit. And obviously, if you're only AoEing on like a boss fight, if like you're only pressing Divine Storm, then it's also good in that case as well. So this is a Herald of the Sun Mythic Plus / AoE build. If you're pressing Divine Storm constantly, this is kind of the build you want to go with. If you're pressing Final Verdict more, then you kind of want to go with the single target build of Herald of the Sun. However, let's talk about Templar single target as well. So, like I said, with these hot fixes that just came out last week around this 20th anniversary that I just missed, honestly, we're going to have Templar move behind it, but it's very close to Herald of the Sun still, despite the fix. It is very close, and I kind of know Blizzard. I wouldn't be surprised if Hammer of Light magically gets buffed, something gets buffed to help Templar. I just wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying. So we're going to go over this just in case, right? This is like a fail-safe. So for single target Templar, we're going to see a lot of the same things. For single target, even on Templar, we're going to have Divine Purpose on the Paladin side. Vengeful Wrath still better for single target, generally speaking. The difference is Divine Purpose can actually work on your Hammer of Light, which costs 5 Holy Power. So it's just a free 5 Holy Power spent, which puts free 5, stacks of Crusade on, for example, right? And so it's just very strong to do so. We can go over, I guess, so that's the change over here, basically, from single target, is not having Vengeful Wrath. However, let's go over the Templar's actual talents as well. We have For Whom the Bell Tolls, we have Sanctification, and then this is I think this node is a utility node. I always pick the Divine Steed one. But that's the utility. Those are the choice nodes for Templar. And then over here, the difference is we actually have this Judgment of Justice instead of Penitence, because we're not going to have as many burns on the target in Templar as we do with Herald of the Sun, because we have some abilities that are causing burn effects and whatnot there. And so everything else is going to be pretty much exactly the same as that same Herald build, except for basically swapping these two talents, Judgment of Justice and Penitence. So that's going to be swapped up there. And other than that, it's going to be pretty much the same. We will go over the rotation for this. At least we'll go over the opener for Templar single target, at least. But yeah, this is just in case they do another quick hot fix, and make Templar be, the best single target, which I think could technically happen. So I'll switch back over here to Herald single target. And so that's going to be all the talents, right? I'll have these import strings in the description below. We'll do Herald single target, Herald AoE, and we will do Templar single target. We'll put those 3 talent imports down below, and you can copy those if you like, or load them up in that way if you like. Let's go ahead and move on, however, to rotation and ability priority. So right now we are in Herald of the Sun single target. And so basically what we're going to do here, this is for your opener. This doesn't mean they will always get to do it this way, right, in the middle of the fight. But for your opener, when you're starting from scratch, right, you're going to want to do a Divine Toll. Now, it might hit this target next to me or something, but we're going to assume it only gives me 2 holy power here, okay? So we're going to Divine Toll. Okay, so it gave me 4, but pretend I only have 2. Then I'm going to Execution Sentence. Then I'm going to Wake of Ashes, which is going to, you know, start my wings. And now I'm going to double, because it gives a free divine purpose when you play Herald. So I'm going to double Verdict, and now I'm just going to put as many verdicts into the Execution Sentence as I possibly can, basically. So it's a very simple opener, and then we'll talk about the actual ability priority. So, and this opener is the same, basically, as the Hammer of Light one with Templar. We'll talk about the slight difference, but we're going to, so again, this is single target Herald. We're going to Divine Toll into Execution Sentence. I guess we can just wait for the Divine Toll to come back up. But we're going to Divine Toll into Execution Sentence into Wake of Ashes. That's going to put us at 5. And then we're going to double tap Verdict. And then we're going to, and that's basically the opener, right? And then we'll talk about ability priority. So we'll show it one more time. We're going to Divine Toll into Execution Sentence, into Wake, into a double Verdict. And then sometimes it'll be a triple based on your Crusading Strike auto attack. And then we just go from there and just keep pumping as many finishers into our Execution Sentence as possible. So now let's talk about the ability priority, right? So we have a few other buttons that we could be pressing, and that's Judgment, Blade of Justice, and Hammer of Wrath. So Judgment is going to be your number 1 priority. That's mostly just because it gives you 2 holy power. And then Blade of Justice is also very good. Hammer of Wrath is right behind that as well, if I'm just being completely honest. Hammer of Wrath is not a bad ability to press. There's also some min-maxing here with this talent, Blessing of Anchi, to make your Hammer of Wrath strong. Maybe I'll do a video if like a weak ore is needed for that or something to track that. But Hammer of Wrath is moved up. So basically what you're going to see is a lot of everything. This Herald stuff has only been getting really thought about for single target in the past week, okay, if I'm just from making this video. So I personally believe, and I haven't got to mess around with it enough, but I personally believe that Hammer of Wrath will be a little bit more important, and certainly Hammer of Wrath will be more important when you're executing the target. It'll be much more important, and it'll also be giving you 2 holy power when you're executing the target. General rule is Judgment, Blade, Hammer of Wrath in that order. So when I say put as many finishers in to the Execution Sentence as possible, those are your builders to make your finishers. So Judgment, Blade, Hammer of Wrath. And in that order, when you get to execute range, remember, Hammer of Wrath is going to give you 2 holy power at that point, and it becomes a lot better to press. It's also getting a little bit of buffed from these Herald of the Sun abilities as well. Hammer of Wrath is. So I wouldn't be shocked if Hammer of Wrath priority maybe moves up a little bit. We will see. Everything's kind of based on how Raidbots is programmed. I don't write the code for that, nor do I know how to. So that's kind of based off of that, and that's just where we are right now. I'll just keep all that stuff in mind. As long as you just follow those general rules, it'll be fine. And if there's an update, I will update that. Or if the APL gets changed for Raidbots, I will update that. Do an update video about that. Let's talk real quick about the AoE ability priority. So AoE ability priority is basically going to be this. It's basically spam Divine Storm as much as possible. So Final Reckoning does not enhance your Wake of Ashes damage. It only does your finishers. So Divine Storm in this case, most of the time. Obviously on a boss in Mythic Plus, it might be Final Verdict. So you do not need to put your Wake into your Final Reckoning. Instead, you want to do the opposite. You want to have your extra damage going. So for your, especially when you're going to AoE, right? So we're going to go ahead and Wake. So as long as you're under 2 Holy Power, right? You're just going to go ahead and Wake of Ashes. You're going to Final Reckoning. And then you're going to Divine Storm. Divine Storm, as soon as you're at 1 or 0 Holy Power, that's when you want to Divine Toll into another Divine Storm. And now we're going to be pressing Blade of Justice as much as possible. Judgment will be our second choice. And our final choice in AoE will, in fact, be Hammer of Wrath. So, and we're just putting as many Divine Storms into our targets and our Final Reckoning as possible when it comes to this. So it's just a slight difference. We don't have that many buttons anymore, so it's not that big of difference for priority wise. But basically, you're starting off with your Wake of Ashes, Final Reckoning, spend. So Divine Storm, however many Divine Storms you proc with Empyrean Power, with the Divine Purpose, we're just gonna keep pressing Divine Storm. When you're at 1 or 0 Holy Power, go ahead and use, I mean, if you're at 2, I guess, you know, you could technically use it as well, right? It's with our auto attack generating a Holy Power, like a lot of times it'll just tick up to 3, whatever. But if you're at 2, you could technically use it as well. But Divine Toll, you want to save it a little bit because, you know, it's going to put you to 5 Holy Power in AoE situations. So that's why I say 1 or lower. But Divine Toll, spam some more Divine Storms, then Blade of Justice, spam Divine Storm, and then Judgment if you have to. And then if somehow you absolutely have to, that's when you would use Hammer of Wrath. In most cases, it's not even going to come up. You're not even going to need to worry about it. So, yeah, that's kind of how you do AoE opener and most of your AoE stuff. Let's go to the Templar single target, and we'll finish up ability priority segment with this. So again, this is mostly just in case they do any little changes or fixes to make Templar a little bit better for single target. It's basically going to be the same thing as that Herald single target opener. The priority is going to be basically the same too. And in fact, it might be even more correct on this because Hammer of Wrath doesn't get buffed as much in this hero talent. So we're going to start with Divine Toll into Execution Sentence into our Wake, but now we have Hammer of Light. So we would use Hammer of Light here, and now we're going to use the normal ability priority. So it'd be like Judgment, Blade, and now of course I'm putting in finishers here as well. And then same things here. So the same thing, but instead of double tapping the Final Verdict, we're going to Hammer of Light, which is going to put us down to 0, and we need to rebuild after that to get as many finishers into our Execution Sentence as possible. So it's very similar. It's the Divine Toll, Execution Sentence, Wake of Ashes, but then instead of double tapping Final Verdict, you're Hammer of Lighting. So it's basically 4 buttons instead of 5 as your opener there. And this is just in case, like I said, they fix it. So that's the ability rotation, or the ability priority and rotations, and we can move on to the next segment. So let's go ahead and now talk about our tier set a little bit. I don't know if I can pull up the tier set. It looks like I can. Is this the right thing? Yeah. So we have Blade of Justice 2 set, Blade of Justice damage increased by 15%, Wake of Ashes damage increased by 10%. It's worth noting that our tier set sucks. It doesn't do hardly any damage. It's like bottom half, bottom third, bottom quarter. It's not one of the better tier sets. It's like, I think I saw the spreadsheet that our tier set does like 4.88% damage increase, whereas like the very best ones are over 10%, so literally twice as good as ours. There's many that are about twice as good as us. There's a few specs that are worse than us as well, to be fair. But that's the 2 set. Doesn't do a whole lot. Nothing that you need to really know much there about. It's all passive. But then Wake of Ashes increases your damage by 8%, or for 8 seconds. That's the 4 set. Now, because of that, Wake of Ashes increasing our damage done, that is why that we are playing Radiant Glory basically no matter what. Radiant Glory is already pretty good, especially in single target because of Execution Sentence. But let's say for AoE, we're using Final Reckoning. Well, you might think, well, let's just use a 1 minute build. Let's use Avenging Might. Let's get rid of Radiant Glory. But the problem is the tier set. So we're going to have tier sets. It increases our damage by an extra 8%. And so it makes it just really, really good, at least for Season 1, because of tier set. That's why we need to play Radiant Glory. I'm hoping that it's tuned in a way, or tier set changes in a way in the future ones where not everybody has to play Radiant Glory for the entire expansion, because I do know some people do not like Radiant Glory. And so as of right now, it's our tier set's fault, but it is still good even without the tier set, especially the single target. So we will see what changes, if anything, because I know some people don't want to play Radiant Glory for the entire expansion, but it is technically going to be the most DPS right now for basically all content, assuming you have the tier set, which we all will eventually, because there's literally a catalyst that lets us get tier set. So eventually we will all have tier set. Now let's talk about Trinkets. So Trinkets is one where I usually end up doing an update. Why? Because Trinkets get tuned a lot, because some Trinkets are not simming properly on raid bots and stuff like that. So Trinkets are something that get changed a lot. However, I'm going to give you 4 Trinkets right now that are very good and are likely to stay good, but we will see. So I'm just going to give you 4 Trinkets. I'm going to tell you, you know, kind of what maybe you should be focused on using for raid, what might you want to use for Mythic Plus, and stuff like that. At least what I'll be using for Mythic Plus. So first one I have written down here is Mark of Cardros. So I can't show you this one in game because I can't currently see. Or I guess, can I go all the way back to, what would it be, Cataclysm? I'm going back here. Where was Grim Batol? Okay, here we go. So I can't look at the loot though, for some reason. Can I look at all? No, you can't look at the loot. Okay, well that's unfortunate. But from Grim Batol, this is going to be in the Season 1. So this is going to be in a Mythic 0, it's going to be a Mythic Plus. Oh, I can go to normal. Here we go. That's why. So is it here? Mark of Cardros. So right here. Increases mastery by a ton. This is a very, very good trinket to have, to use. It's good for Mythic Plus. It's good for single target as well, because mastery is just kind of good for us in all situations. So this is a very, very good trinket. This is one you might want to target, so you can run Grim Batol, try to get a Mark of Cardros. Obviously, in the perfect world, you'd get this from your vault, and it would be max item level from your vault, right? But Mark of Cardros is very, very good. Another one we'll talk about as we go back to War Within is we're going to go to Arakara, and we will talk about the Arakara Sack Brood. This is a very good trinket as well. It simulates very, very, very well. It's very powerful, and so this is one you can go as well. It's a dungeon. A lot of these trinkets are going to be dungeon. I am going to actually mention one from raid as well. That's very strong. But the Arakara one from Arakara, fittingly named, is also quite good for us as well. Another trinket. This one's going to be from Stone Vault. I think I even might have mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it by name, but I might have mentioned this in the preseason guide as well. And that's the Skarmrak Shard. This increases our mastery as well. So that's a very, very good trinket that you can use, again, in pretty much any content. One that's going to be a little bit more raid focused is actually a raid trinket. Surprise, surprise. So let's go to the raid, New Rar Palace, and off of, let's go to, back to Rat Paladin. Yes, the Mad Queen's Mandate. This trinket is very strong. I don't know if it's overstimulating or what. This is a very strong trinket. It just does a ton of damage, basically. And it's easy to get a high eye level because it drops at a high eye level, but the Mad Queen's Mandate is also very, very good. Now, what I would suggest using is like the Arakara Sack Brood or whatever, and then like either Mark of Cardros or Skarmrak Shard for like single target. And then for in Mythic Plus, I actually like to always use 2 on use if I have 2 on use. So right now I have like Priory and I have Skarmrak Shard, and I use these because having an on-use trinket to use for each pull, for each AoE pull, is really, really good. And very often you can kind of just... Okay. So those are 4 trinkets. That doesn't mean that other trinkets won't be good or are not simulating right, or I didn't look at them correctly myself. If I need to add more trinkets to the list, I'll add more trinkets to the list. If I need to update or they tune trinkets, I will update it then. We talked about that at the top of the video as well. For single target, I would focus on using Arakara Sack Brood, and then like Mark of Cardros, for example, would be a good choice. Skarmak Shards, very similar. They're all pretty similar. They're all very good and they're pretty similar. However, Mad Queen's Mandate also simulates at least very, very well. So you could use Mad Queen's Mandate as well as a single target raid trinket, and that would be fine. So any of those are basically fine for single target. Even 2 on use for single target is fine, because the way we have cooldowns every 30 seconds, so we're able to put a trinket into everything. And for that same reason is why I always like using 2 on use in Mythic Plus. So I always have a power boost at the beginning, not always, but almost always have a power boost at the beginning of a pull. So for that case, what I'm going to be trying to use in Mythic Plus is Mark of Cardros and the Skarmak Shard. The 2 on use mastery trinkets that we talked about. That's what I'll be trying to use for my Mythic Plus setup, unless something changes, because they're just very, very strong, and it's very strong to pop a trinket of those power levels at the beginning of a pull, and then have it for the next pull, and then maybe you don't have it for one pull, and then you have it again, right? That's very, very powerful to do that, and it just increases your damage a lot to do that. So those are 4 trinkets for now. Like I said, I can add more if things end up changing or being different than what's being simulated right now, and we will do that when we have to. Next up, let's talk about crafted gear and embellishments as well. So crafted gear, when it comes to crafted gear, same rules apply as the end of Dragonflight. Crafted gear does not go up to the item level that you can get from other sources, right? So if all you do is, if the biggest raid you do is heroic raid, and so you don't get the highest crest to do like mythic level crests, the highest crafted gear you're gonna get is like 3 eye levels lower than your highest level heroic gear. If you do mythic raid, then your highest low, and you get the mythic level crest or whatever, then the highest gear is going to be 3 eye levels lower than the mythic gear. So crafted gear is a little bit weaker. So because that's the case, we want to put these on pieces of gear that do not have as many stats, namely bracers and cloak if possible. That's where you're going to want to target putting your crafted gear on. I will say, if you want to craft a weapon for early DPS, because we talked on stats, weapon DPS is like the #1 thing, and you craft a weapon, that's fine too. And there is a good embellishment for weapon as well that you can use, and we can mention that as well. So you can do that, but ultimately, if you were just going to have best in slot in every single slot, you would want your crafted embellishments to be on your bracers and your cloak, just because those have the lowest stat budget, and so you're losing out on the least amount of strength, the least amount of mastery, that kind of thing. So cloak and bracers is generally going to be what you want to target there. When it comes to what to embellish them with, this is something that gets tuned a lot. I'm going to mention 2 specifically, and I'll mention the weapon thing as well. Dawn thread. So this is very similar to the thread, the blue linen thread or something like that from Dragonflight that increased our mastery while above 80% health. This increases our crit while above 80% health. I do think as the expansion goes on, this will lose its power level a lot. Right now, stats are at a premium, so having a lot of extra crit can be quite powerful. However, if we have 30% crit later in the expansion, it might not be so. But this is Season 1, and it's beginning of Season 1. So this is a very good one. Dawn Thread Lining. Increases crit while above 80% health. The other thing you can notice is, hey, on this boss fight, I'm never above 80% health. I'm always almost dead. Well, then this would not be a good embellishment to use. Another option right now to use is Elemental Focusing Lens. That just does bonus magic damage. Just like Dragonflight, these embellishments don't do a ton of damage. So it's just, you're just min-maxing here which one you want. So right now, Dawn Thread is probably the best option, especially for Season 1. And Elemental Focusing Lens is another option for Season 1. Now there are these Nerubian embellishments. And there's one, Darkmoon Fair Ascension, I believe it's called. And you can put this on your weapon. So let's say you craft a weapon, right? You say, I just want my DPS right now. I don't care about later. I'm crafting a weapon. If you do that, you can put the Darkmoon Fair Sigil Ascension, I believe it is, on it. And then on like your bracers or something, right? you can put, it's called something banding. It's another Nerubian embellishment, and it just mimics the one that you already have on. So it's like having 2 of the Dark Moon Ascension ones on. And that is actually very powerful as well. The biggest downside, of course, is having a lower item level weapon when weapon DPS is your #1 stat. So it's like a very early power move to do. Like, I'm crafting this, I have 2 sparks, I haven't used a spark yet, I'm crafting this weapon, and I'm having a big old weapon going into the raid. And it's going to be powerful, and it's going to have embellishment on it, and that is something you can do early and reap some benefits for that. But in the long run, it might not be the best thing to do. So those are kind of the things you're thinking about there. You can do it, of course, especially early on. It's going to pay high dividends. In the long run, probably not as much. So it depends on what your goals are and everything like that. If you're fine having a weapon that's 3 item levels lower for being really powerful early, then that's great. You can just go ahead and do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with either choice. Whichever one you want to do there, I think both of them are fine. Let's go ahead and move on now, after embellishments and crafting, to consumables, enchants, and gems. So first we'll talk about consumables. So the best flask for us is going to be the Flask of Tempered Mastery. No surprise there. This is going to increase our mastery, obviously. Potions are going to be these tempered potions. I just have rank 1 ones here, but obviously rank 3 when you can afford them, or if you already can afford them or make them. Tempered potions. For food, since we had a change there, strength food, it's going to be safe to use. If you don't have strength food available to you for whatever reason, you could use highest secondary stat food, which is going to increase your mastery, hopefully. Hopefully you've stacked a little bit of mastery up, and so you'll basically mastery food in that case. But highest secondary stat food being mastery, or of course strength food if possible, because that's going to be a little bit better. As far as our weapon thing goes, so I think I can make these Iron Claw whetstones. Yeah, these things right here. These are very expensive right now, so you're probably not going to want to be just throwing these on your weapon. Null stones are over 3,000 gold a piece, and therefore these things could be a little bit. Even this thing costs less than the match to make it right now, but these things are a bit expensive. If you don't want to put these on your weapon right now, it's understandable. But Iron Claw whetstone is what you can use right now. As far as powering up your weapon. When it comes to enchants, let's go through them. So our weapon enchant, let's do that first. Right now, the best thing you could probably put on is Stonebound Artistry. This is just going to increase mastery. However, there is a drop from the raid. So before raid comes out, which is when I'm recording this, it will not be available. But once the raid comes out, I'm sure it'll be available. And that's called Authority of the Depths. It just does damage on proc. It's very strong though. This could be tuned as well if it's too strong. So your choices are Stonebound Artistry for the mastery, or the Authority of the Depths once people get this drop from the raid and are available to craft it for you. For our cloak, we're going to take Chant of Winged Grace. That's the same thing as Graceful Avoidance basically from Dragonflight. For our chest, we want Crystalline Radiance, which is strength. For our bracer, we want Chant of Armored Avoidance, which is avoidance. For legs, we want the Stormbound armor kit, which is going to increase our strength and stamina. For boots, you can either do Scout's March for speed or Defender's March for stamina. For rings, generally speaking, you're going to want to put Mastery on your rings. When it comes to gems, the final thing here, gems, we want the Strength plus Crit Effect gem, because you can have one of these major gems or whatever. So you want the Strength plus Crit Effect. And then on all your other gems, you probably are going to want Mastery plus Haste. So main stat Mastery with side of Haste. They might be, I can't remember, they might be called Onyx something. But it's the Mastery plus Haste gem that you'll want when it comes to gemming up your gear. And of course, that goes right along with our stats. Haste, Mastery is something that scales pretty well. And then Haste is our second best stat that scales. So it kind of makes sense that you're going to want to do those based on what we talked about earlier. So I think that's going to be about it for this guide. As always, it's always a bit long. Thanks for staying with me. But as always, I do also ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out a ton. For those of you who are already subscribers, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody, Have a good one.